mother-in-law tried to make me take a vitamin, but her paralyzed husband secretly slipped me a note. I pretended to swallow it and drove straight to the police. I was visiting my in-laws when my mother-in-law handed me a small white pill. "Just a vitamin, dear. You look pale," she said, smiling warmly. Something felt off. She'd never cared about my health before. In fact, she barely tolerated me since I married her son. I reached for my water glass when I felt something brush against my hand. My father-in-law, paralyzed from a stroke 6 months ago, had slipped me a crumpled piece of paper. His eyes were locked on mine, desperate and urgent. His good hand trembled as he pulled it back. I palmed the note quickly and pretended to swallow the pill, tucking it under my tongue instead. "Thanks. That's so sweet of you," I said, forcing the biggest smile I could manage. My mother-in-law watched me the entire time, her eyes following the glass as I drank. "Make sure you swallow it all the way down," she said, still smiling. "Sometimes they get stuck in your throat." I nodded and excused myself to the bathroom. The second I locked the door, I spit the pill into my hand and unfolded the note. The handwriting was shaky, barely legible, but I could make out 3 words: "Not a vitamin." My heart started pounding. I wrapped the pill carefully in toilet paper and shoved it deep into my pocket. When I looked in the mirror, my face was completely drained of color. I walked back out to the living room. My mother-in-law was in the kitchen making tea, humming softly. "Feeling better already, sweetheart?" she called out without looking at me. "Yeah, much better," I lied. My father-in-law was staring at me from his wheelchair, and I could see relief wash over his face when our eyes met. I told her I needed to grab my phone charger from the car and would be right back. She didn't even turn around, just waved dismissively. "Don't take too long, dear. Tea's almost ready." I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove straight to the police station. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. At the station, I walked up to the front desk and pulled out the tissue with the pill inside. "I need someone to test this right now," I said, my voice cracking. My mother-in-law gave it to me and told me it was a vitamin, but my father-in-law slipped me a note saying it wasn't. The officer looked skeptical at first, but something in my face must have convinced him. He took the pill to their lab tech, and I sat in a plastic chair, bouncing my leg anxiously. 20 minutes later, the officer came back. His face had gone completely pale. "Ma'am, this isn't a vitamin. This is a heavy-dose sedative, the kind that would knock someone out for hours." I felt the room start spinning. "What happens if someone takes this? In the right dose, you just sleep, but this amount?" He shook his head. "Combined with alcohol or other medications, it could stop your breathing." I told them everything. How my father-in-law had his stroke 6 months ago. How my mother-in-law moved him into the guest room and hired a nurse who only came 3 times a week. How she constantly complained about how expensive his care was. They sent 2 officers to the house immediately. I waited at the station, pacing. An hour later, they called me into an interview room. "We found a locked cabinet in her bedroom," the detective said, sliding photos across the table. "Bottles of the same sedative, different strengths. A journal with dates and dosages." He paused. "Your father-in-law has been heavily medicated for months, but not by any doctor." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means she's been keeping him barely conscious. Too out of it to communicate, but awake enough that it doesn't look suspicious." He leaned forward. "We also found a recent life insurance policy. $2 million. Taken out 4 months ago." I felt sick. "He was trying to tell people, wasn't he?" The detective nodded. "The nurse mentioned he'd been acting strangely, trying to write things, getting agitated when your mother-in-law entered the room. She convinced everyone it was stroke confusion." "Why did she try to drug me?" He pulled out another photo, a will freshly printed. "Your father-in-law recently told his lawyer he wanted to change his will. Leave everything to you and your husband, cutting her out almost entirely. She found the email last week. She wasn't just trying to knock me out, she was testing it. If it worked on me, she'd do the same to her husband, collect the insurance, and play the grieving widow." My father-in-law had saved my life with 3 shaky words. They arrested her that night. My husband was destroyed, but he stood by his father and me. We moved his dad into our house, and with proper care, he's starting to recover.